Hello, folks. My name is Alistair Donaghy. I'm one of the regional officials with NEU, and I work closely with Nuala O'Donnell from INTO, who will be our main speaker today, and with Lee Cooper from UTU. And together, we deliver a programme of joint training and CPD for our school reps and members. Today's webinar is the first in a series which will be made available to all members to inform and update you on important matters relating to your rights and responsibilities and to your teachers' terms and conditions of employment more generally. The session is scheduled to last no more than 1 hour. All of our webinars are being recorded, and along with the presentations will be made available to members on all 3 union websites and communications with you. Today's session is on teacher attendance and sick leave, focusing on the teacher attendance procedure set out in TNC 2008/2, and it's being delivered by Nuala O'Donnell. During the presentation, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to post them in the chat or in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we will try to respond to them either at the end of the session if we have time, or afterwards, and we will keep a record of any questions to ensure that we don't miss anything. So with that, can I introduce Nuala, who will take us through today's session.
Thank you very much, Alistair. I'm going to start with the sick leave entitlement for teachers, absence due to illness. And the first, sorry, just hold on a minute, there we go. The first slide there gives you who the scheme applies to, that it is for permanent teachers or temporary teachers who are paid as though they're employed in a permanent capacity, and then part-time teachers, all of whom have to be employed for a period of 12 months or more, and part-time teachers are paid on a pro rata basis. In other words, this does not apply to part-time teachers, or sorry, to substitute teachers or those employed through NISTER. The unions have been raising this as an issue and are still pursuing to try and get sick leave for long-term substitute teachers, but currently that is not available. The sick leave entitlement for teachers actually runs from the 1st of April in any year and ending on the 31st of March the following year. However, if you are absent due to illness on the 31st of March and continue to be so after that date, that period will be treated as having been part of the previous year's entitlement of sick leave. The sick leave then, in respect of the new year, will only commence on the day on which the teacher goes back to school. So that's how the sick leave scheme actually works. If you're actually ill prior to the school holidays and you continue to be ill over those holidays, you shall be paid at the rate that you would have been paid on the last working day. In other words, if you are on full pay at the end of June on your sick leave, then you will continue to be paid on full pay throughout the summer holidays. But those summer holidays are not counted against your entitlement to paid sick leave. If you are on half pay going into the holidays, you would be paid on half pay. And if you are on no pay, you would not get any pay over that period. If you have been ill immediately prior to the holidays and you cease to be entitled to full or half pay, and you recover from illness during the holiday period, you shall be regarded as having returned to school on the day you are certified medically fit to do so. In other words, if you were had gone on half pay and you were on half pay up until the end of July, but you were certified fit to return on the 1st of August by your doctor, you would be deemed to go on to full pay at that point. And as long as you actually resume duty on the first day the school opens, generally on a Baker Day, if that was the August period. This is how sick pay is calculated for teachers. It's based on the service you have, and it tells you how much full pay and half pay you would be entitled to. So during your first year of working, if you would get 25 working days on full pay and 25 working days on half pay, sorry, 50 on half pay after 4 months. On the second year, it's 50 working days on full pay and 50 working days on half pay. Third year, 75 working days on full pay and 75 working days on half pay. And for the fourth and successive years, It's then 100 working days on full pay and 100 working days on half pay. Teachers are contracted to work 195 days in a year. So if you have 100 working days on full pay and 100 working days on half pay, that is actually more than a year. Statutory sick pay is an element of the sick pay that you receive from the Department of Education. Most teachers will be entitled to receive statutory sick pay during the first 28 weeks of illness in a period of 3 years. Your full pay contains statutory sick pay, and your half pay will be half pay plus statutory sick pay. Once your statutory sick pay runs out, you will be contacted by the Department of Education and informed that your statutory sick pay has run out and that you should complete what is an SSP1 form and return to the department immediately. And this will then be sent, you have to send a form to the Social Security Office, and they will then estimate if you're entitled to incapacity benefit if you have exhausted sick pay. It's also important that if you have an industrial injury, you do need to inform the department that you have that, and there are forms for which to be completed, because there may then be compensation in relation to that or for the statutory sick pay element. In relation to notifying of your absence, where you are actually sick and unable to attend school, you must notify the principal by phone on the first day of absence and indicate the nature of the illness and the possible duration. You do not have to go into full details with your principal on the phone, but you do have to notify them. You do have to keep the principal informed, and if you are off for 1 to 7 calendar days, you will complete a self-certification form, which should be available in the school. If you are off for more than 7 days, you should obtain a sick line from your doctor. And if that sick line is for 2 weeks and you're off for longer than that, you then need to get a further sick line from your doctor and continue to do so until you return to work. Basically, that is the sick leave entitlement, but it is very much linked to the attendance procedure, which, as Alistair said, is the TNC document 2008-2. The aim of this procedure, and this is very important, is to promote a supportive approach to teacher health and welfare. This is not to be seen as a punishment for teachers. It's to ensure that teachers are treated fairly, consistently, and sensitively when ill. It is to maximise teacher attendance and to raise awareness of welfare support services, but it also has to ensure confidentiality of information and facilitate a consistent approach to teacher attendance in schools. The aim is also to inform teachers and governors of the policy for managing teacher attendance. It is important to note that disability may come under teacher attendance, and it is unlawful under the Disability Discrimination Act to discriminate against disabled people in all aspects of employment. It requires governors and employing authorities to consider the provision of reasonable adjustments at school for anyone who would be identified under the Disability Discrimination Act. The aim of those adjustments is to ensure that a teacher is not put at a substantial disadvantage by employment arrangements or any physical feature of the school. And governors are required to ensure that they have fully considered the issue of disability when dealing with any matters relating to a teacher's health and well-being. And hopefully this will assure teachers that if they do have any disability, that they will be treated fairly. Work-related stress, unfortunately, is a major cause of occupational ill health. It may cause sickness absence, high turnover, and poor performance in school. Where this is identified as an issue in teacher attendance, the employing authority should be approached for advice and guidance in cases where there is a possibility that occupational factors may be impacting on a teacher's health. In other words, there may be factors within the school that are impacting on the teacher's health and causing them to be off with a work-related stress. It is important that there is the potential for an occupational health referral. And if work-related stress is down on a teacher's sick certificate from the doctor, the principal should immediately contact the employing authority for a referral to occupational health to identify what those issues are and what the school can do to help alleviate that work-related stress. The managing teacher attendance, there are roles and responsibilities for governors, the principal, the employing authority, and of course, teachers. If we take governors first, governors have to ensure that welfare and attendance is a regular issue on the agenda for boards of governors meetings. They have to monitor the implementation through principal reports to promote teacher well-being and manage teacher attendance. And importantly, they should nominate a designated governor with responsibility for health, welfare, and attendance. And the three go together. And they should ensure that appropriate action is taken in medical referrals to occupational health and ensure that the recommendations in the occupational health reports are enacted, and to ensure that the principal is effectively managing attendance of all teachers in the school. The role and responsibility of the principal is to monitor and manage the sickness absence of teachers in a fair, consistent and confidential manner, and to report regularly to governors. They need to ensure that teachers are informed of the procedure, and they should seek advice from the employing authority where medical evidence indicates a notifiable illness, work-related ill health or disability, which may require welfare support as detailed earlier. They need to maintain appropriate supportive contact with teachers on sickness absence. And that's important to note, that it's appropriate supportive contact with teachers who are off on sick leave. It is the responsibility of the principal to initiate requests where necessary to the employing authority for referrals to occupational health and to liaise with teachers as appropriate. They should carry out, where appropriate, attendance meetings and keep records. They should support, as far as practicable, a rehabilitation programme recommended by occupational health, and also implement any reasonable adjustment required by a teacher's disability. The employing authority is responsible for providing information and advice to principals, and advice and support to governors in managing teachers, teacher welfare and attendance. They facilitate the medical referral process and advise principals on rehabilitation, risk assessments and reasonable adjustments. They initiate the requests for referrals to occupational health and liaise with teachers, and they promote the implementation of the policy and ensure governors and principals are trained on the procedure. Now, the role and responsibility of teachers in the attendance procedure, and this is important. All teachers must report all sickness absence in accordance with this procedure. They must maintain contact with the principal during any period of absence. If a teacher is off with work-related stress, however, they can request that the union may intercede on their behalf to maintain that contact with the principal. However, that needs to be negotiated. It's not just something that they decide to do, but it is possible, and that's one of the supports that the union does provide. The teachers must comply with attendance-related arrangements at medical referrals, and they must follow professional advice aimed at ensuring a timely return to school. It's important that teachers maintain appropriate standards of conduct during sickness absence. In other words, a teacher cannot just go on holidays when they are off sick. If that is something that the GP advises, They need to inform the school and get the agreement of the school to do so. They must advise the principal of any appropriate matter impacting on their health and well-being at home or school that may impact on their welfare. And this is important that teachers do this, because if a principal is not aware of a matter that is impacting on the teacher's health and well-being, they may take different action than they would if they were informed of that. They also need to inform the principal where an absence is due to an accident outside school, and a claim for damages from a third party is or will be involved. Monitoring teacher attendance. These are the 3 triggers that are used in monitoring teacher attendance. A, absences related to stress, which we have touched on previously. B, absences of more than 6 casual days in a 12-month rolling period. And C, continuous absences of 4 weeks or more. Within the procedure, teachers shall maintain contact with the principal during a period of a sickness absence. And that's usually when they're submitting a medical cert or maybe during a long-term absence. In relation to return to work, it is the responsibility of the teacher to report to the principal as early as possible on the first day of their return to work and provide a brief explanation of the reason for their absence. This is to be informal in nature and provides the opportunity for the principal to welcome the teacher back and discuss any support or further action which may be required. This can take the form of the teacher knocking on the principal's door and saying, "I'm back," the principal asking, "Are you okay?" And they say, "Yes, I'm fine. Is there anything we need to do?" No. It is an informal return. It is not a formal meeting. Attendance meetings are different. If a teacher's absence level or pattern presents a concern, the principal shall arrange a formal attendance meeting. And the circumstances presenting a concern are usually those included in the absences on the previous slide, which are absences related to stress, absences of more than 6 casual days in a 12-month rolling period, or continued absences of 4 weeks or more. At the attendance meeting, or before the attendance meeting, the teacher should be asked in writing to attend the meeting and advised that they may be accompanied by a recognised trade union representative or teaching colleague. The purpose of the attendance meeting is to determine and discuss the reasons for the absence level or pattern. And importantly, it is not a disciplinary meeting. Depending on how the teacher feels about the attendance meeting and also the reason for the absence, sometimes they do bring a teaching colleague or they ask for a recognised trade union representative. And we represent members at these types of meetings regularly. The purpose of the meeting is to establish the current health status of the teacher and whether there's an underlying cause for the absence, which might be difficulty at work, a more serious health condition, a personal or a domestic problem. Then is to consider the need for a reasonable adjustment in the case of disability, to consider if an OH appointment is required if this has not been established, to consult and agree on actions arising from the OH report if one has been actioned, to advise of the availability of the staff care scheme, which is currently Inspire, to confirm the accuracy of the teacher's attendance and provide the teacher with a copy. And that is important because sometimes that can be incorrect, and it does need to ensure that it is correct for any consideration under this procedure. To encourage improved attendance, establish the improvement level required, the monitoring review period, and the consequences of a continuing unsatisfactory level of attendance. Following the meeting, A note of the meeting should be prepared and forwarded to the teacher for their agreement. And it is important that this is agreed, and because it will be a record of the actual meeting. It should be a brief and factual report of the meeting, noting any actions proposed, including, for example, the introduction of reasonable adjustments, risk assessment, continued monitoring, medical referral, potential movement to disciplinary action if attendance does not improve. It's important again to stress that teachers have the right to be accompanied to these meetings, and I would refer you to a previous webinar on the right to be accompanied, which is available for the school reps of INTO, NEU and UTU. And if there are questions that you have in relation to that, please contact your school rep or your union. The employing authority may be contacted for advice on any proposed course of action. But it's important that the Principal and Chair of Governors treat all information relating to staff absence with sensitivity and confidentiality. A follow-up meeting shall be arranged at this attendance meeting if there is a requirement for review, etc. There are different types of attendance. Short-term absence is something that can normally be dealt with during the informal return to work discussions. However, where the frequency of absences gives cause for concern, the principal may wish to conduct an attendance meeting. And that's where it's important that the record of attendance is correct. Persistent intermittent absence. The management of this type of absence requires sensitive judgment, and principals and governors should be aware of the Disability Discrimination Act and the need to make reasonable adjustments. Attendance meetings should be conducted and medical information obtained where it is medically established that a teacher is not suffering from any significantly debilitating illness and management intervention has failed to achieve improved attendance, and the relevant procedure may be invoked. So it's important that that persistent intermittent absence is handled very sensitively. Long-term absence is where a teacher has been absent for 4 weeks continuously or longer, and there is no indication of an imminent return to teaching. And the principal has a concern, the situation should be assessed in consultation with the employing authority. Each case will be dealt with sympathetically. And I think that's important because each case will be different and needs to be dealt with sympathetically. While early referral to occupational health may be a factor in the effective management of long-term absence, consideration should be given to the timing of the referral based on the nature of the illness. And that again is important because if someone has been diagnosed with a condition, which means they are likely to be off for a long period of time, it is unlikely that a referral to occupational health will tell the school anything more than they knew already. In relation to medical information, a teacher may be asked to give their written consent for their doctor to be approached for a medical report, or a referral may be made to the employing authority's occupational health physician or specialist. It is important to note that if a teacher is giving their consent for their doctor to be approached for a medical report, that they understand exactly what their doctor is actually going to be asked before they give their consent to that. A teacher may be referred to occupational health physician in the following circumstances, but the list is not exhaustive. If there is a concern about a teacher's health and well-being, if their absence gives the principal cause for concern, if they have a prolonged illness absence and wish to return on a temporary, permanent, alternative working pattern for medical reasons, where the principal has been notified that the teacher is disabled or suffering from a disability, or where there are absences lasting 3 months or more due to a psychiatric disorder. So those are some of the examples where teachers may be referred to an occupational health physician. When teachers are referred for occupational health assessments, they sometimes have concerns in relation to what this means for them. In the first instance, the principal should discuss the referral with the member of staff and inform them of the request for a medical referral. The teacher then shall attend a medical assessment by an occupational health physician if required by the principal. And it's important to note that failure to attend without a reasonable cause will result in the costs associated with the referral being the responsibility of the teacher and may result in the withholding of sick pay and/or disciplinary action. To date, I am unaware of the withholding of sick pay. However, we have had some teachers having to pay the costs of around £150 to £200 because they didn't turn up at the occupational health assessment. So please, if you are referred and you are unable to attend, make sure you let them know. On receipt of the report of the occupational health physician, the employing authority will notify the teacher and the principal of the outcome of the assessment, excuse me, and provide the teacher with a copy of the report. And it says there in the procedure that they would provide them with a copy of the report if requested, subject to medical advice. But under GDPR, teachers are entitled to a copy of the report from occupational health before it is sent to the employer. And they do have the option, while they can't change what the occupational health physician has written, they can add in their own notes to it if they feel that maybe something wasn't completely covered or was maybe misinterpreted. So it is important that if you are attending an occupational health physician, that you ask that the report is sent to you before it is sent to your employer. The principal will be advised of the teacher's fitness for work or otherwise, including where appropriate, any recommended action. The principal does not receive the full report that the teacher does. The principal will receive the recommended actions and advised of in response to any questions that they may have asked. It is the responsibility of the Board of Governors to meet any costs incurred in obtaining medical opinions. And again, I would stress that all information acquired by Boards of Governors and the Employing Authority on teacher health matters should be treated with sensitivity and access restricted to the relevant decision bodies. When a teacher is ready to return to work, they must give adequate notification to the principal in advance of the date of return so that arrangements for cover can be discontinued. If the absence has been of 4 or more weeks duration, the teacher must give 1 week's notice of their intention to return to work to the principal. This is important because failure to do so can delay the teacher's return. Where the original doctor statement covers a period exceeding 14 days, or where more than one statement is required, the teacher must, prior to the actual return to work, obtain and submit a final medical statement certifying fitness to resume full duties. On occasion, that statement will also include from the GP the recommendation for a phased return. In circumstances where a recommendation is made by occupational health that a phased return to work would assist a teacher, this should, where possible, be facilitated by the principal in line with the needs of the school. If the GP has recommended a phased return to work, the teacher may be asked to attend an occupational health referral to ascertain what that would entail. The time span of the phased return to work should normally be based on occupational health advice and will be reviewed regularly. In most cases, the phased return will normally not last for more than 4 weeks. And the nature of this and type of it will be agreed at a meeting with the principal and the teacher, and sometimes the employing authority and the union representative, to agree the pattern for the attendance of the phased return. For example, it may be that on the first week, the teacher returns 1 day, the second week, 2 days, third week, 3 days, fourth week, 4 days, and then on the fifth week, they return to full time. Normal salary will be paid during a phased return to school. In other words, teachers will be paid their full pay, even if they are only in 1 day, 2 days, or whatever on the phased return. That actually concludes the presentation on sick leave and attendance. And I'm now going to hand over to Alistair to see if we have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nuala. That was very, very comprehensive. There's no questions lodged yet. So if anybody wants to take a minute or two and maybe stick a few questions in, feel free to do so. And while you're doing that, I'll maybe just cover a few points and emphasize a few points that Nuala covered. Just bear in mind that the entitlement to, for example, 100 days full pay on sick leave, that is only where the school or the employer is satisfied that you're actually going to return. So if they suspect that somebody's making no effort to return, that would spark a referral to occupational health or some other action to try to get the teacher to return. The other thing to bear in mind when it comes to keeping in contact with the principal, as Nuala says, there's a responsibility on the teacher to keep the principal informed. So rather than saying, I won't be in, you could say, I won't be in because I have an upset stomach. That's fine. But you shouldn't go into any more detail than that. And always be mindful that the principal is not medically trained or qualified to make any assessment. That's what occupational health are for. So you don't have to tell all of the details of the condition to the principal. The other issue just to bear in mind, and Nuala covered it quite comprehensively, around stress and work-related stress. The approach that we take, and it's why all of the unions are keen to be part of the process for members. If it's work-related stress, somebody has put you into a stressful environment. So it's not an assessment of your ability to cope with stress. It's for us to work with the employer to address what is it in the working environment that is causing stress, for example, workload or some other pressures. The referral to occupational health as well, always be mindful that it's not a blanket referral or a blind referral. The employers have a checklist of 10 or 12 questions, and they will tick the specific questions that they want occupational health to report back on. So for example, is this teacher likely to return soon? Is this teacher covered by disability? Is this teacher in the ill health retirement category? So the occupational health referral will be targeted to the specific needs of the school. The phased return as well, and Nuala has covered that in detail. Usually it's a 4-week period, but again, there needs to be a dialogue with the school because the conditions will be different. If I'm coming back after a long-term absence and my condition was a physical condition, it may well be tiredness or stamina. So 1 day a week, 2 days a week is useful in that environment. If my absence was mental health related or stress related, it may well be that I can return full-time, but I'm not returning to the classroom full-time. So I would come in and I would be phased back into teaching whilst being back in school full-time. So there's a whole range of issues, and that's why teachers are not expected to be experts on the process, but your trade union officials will be a lot better versed in that. So always seek advice from the union, and if you're invited to a meeting that qualifies for being accompanied, always take that option up. There's just a couple of questions here which I'll read out, and any of them myself or Nuala can answer them. The first question is, are there differences regarding absences due to COVID, tiredness and stamina, or why I am currently off following a COVID infection? If I try to answer that, and then Nuala, if you come in, if there's anything additional to that. If you are absent and it is a COVID related, either you've been confirmed as having COVID or suspected of having COVID, the trigger for counting the number of days sick leave is adjusted to take account of that. If you're off longer than the 10 days of the isolation period and you have a condition, and we're starting to find out more and more about conditions that are categorized as long COVID, that's a bit more difficult because that hasn't been fully established yet. But we are working, all of the public sector unions, teaching included, on trying to get long COVID in the same category as a condition that qualifies you for the Disability Discrimination Act, so we can get some further protection for you. There's also a separate agreement with the unions and the Department of Education on how various COVID absences are dealt with. So we'll share that information with you as well. A couple of comments in the chat box. Some management are currently asking for a return to week meeting after 1 day absence. Can you please advise on this? As Nuala says, the formal meeting is the attendance meeting. So if there's an issue that Nuala has identified that will lead to an attendance meeting, that will take place. The return to work meeting, as Nuala says, it should be informal in nature, and it could be something as simple as, good to see you back. Whilst you were off, you missed X, Y, and Z. That's you up to speed. Is there anything else we can do to help? If it is a conversation that's longer than that, then I would take the view that's no longer a return to work discussion. You're straying into an attendance meeting. But certainly the employer has a duty of care towards you. So whether you're off for 1 day or a month, the employer still has a duty to touch base and to check in with you through the return to work process, because there may well be the establishment of a pattern of absences that the principal might have a view on, or the principal has to be seen to be giving you the opportunity at the return to work meeting to say, I need a bit of help with this, or for you to get yourself up to speed. So even if there is a 1 day absence, we would say it's good practice to have that return to work meeting, but it would be a fairly brief meeting normally.
Yeah, and I think if it is straying into the type of formal attendance meetings, as we did say there, if you are being asked to a formal attendance meeting, you're supposed to be invited in writing to it and informed that you're entitled to be accompanied. So I think it may require clarification of what type of meeting it is. And if it is the informal meeting, then as Alistair says, it should be brief.
Thanks, Nuala. Another question was, does the teacher have to give permission for the employer to contact their doctor, or can they refuse? Whether it's the employer, the principal, or the employing authority, none of them are medically trained, so they shouldn't be asking for anything from your doctor. That would start alarm bells ringing for most trade union reps, because it would sound like the school are trying to bypass the occupational health option. The occupational health contract is the system by which schools access medical advice. If the occupational health doctor, either before or during the appointment with the teacher, needs clarification, then they, as a medical practitioner, can ask your GP or your consultant as a medical practitioner to share information. That's perfectly appropriate, and we would argue it's more than reasonable. But certainly, if I was a school principal asking a GP what is wrong with teacher whoever, what am I supposed to do with that information? I'm not medically trained, so we would always caution against that. You can't refuse to attend unreasonably an occupational health referral. But any concerns around access to medical information, we would say that should be between the occupational health doctor and your consultant or GP, that the principal shouldn't have any say in that. There is another question that's come in here.
Sorry, just on that, Alistair, I think you can refuse to give access to your GP, because the school would have to get your permission to do that. However, what you can do is actually, if it's not going to be a referral to occupational health, you can ask the school what information it is they're looking for, and that you can get that information from your doctor. which gives you back control of it. And I think that's where we would always be advising that you're in control of this situation, either that you are providing the information via your GP, or that you are referred to occupational health, where you are then informing the occupational health practitioner what the issues are.
Thanks, Nuala. There's another question that's come in. Due to my underlying health condition, my GP and consultant feel it is unsafe for me to be in school due to rising COVID cases. My principal has suggested a referral to occupational health. How long does it usually take for the appointment with occupational health? A couple of issues in that question. The referral to occupational health, it could be 2 to 3 weeks. And due to COVID restrictions, a lot of those referrals are over the phone rather than face-to-face. So it's a matter of weeks. The referral to occupational health in that situation is not to second guess your doctor or your consultant to decide, are you really sick or not? It's to give the employer advice from an occupational health perspective to say, here is what you need to do to make the workplace conducive to a return to work. If the occupational health look at the GP and the consultant's information and say, yes, I concur, they may say it's not safe for you to go back, so you're still off. One other element of that scenario is if it was slightly reversed, if your GP or consultant were saying you're fit for work, or the doctor gives you a fit note that says you're fit to return. If the employer disagrees with that, the employer can say in certain circumstances, don't come back to work until after we get occupational health advice. And that would be particularly relevant if there was a disability element where the school are relying on occupational health to tell them what the reasonable adjustment is. In a situation like that, where your GP is saying you're fit for work and the school are saying don't come back yet, you should be moved from sick pay to medical suspension. And the benefit there to the teacher is medical suspension is on full pay. So if you were on half pay and keen to get back and there was a delay, then you would be back on full pay on medical suspension rather than your half pay, if that makes sense. I'll just check. Go ahead,
that question as well. What we would advise, rather than having to wait for an appointment with occupational health, that there should be a risk assessment carried out, and there are templates for that in relation to COVID on the department's website and also on the union websites. And in relation to that risk assessment, you could get information from your GP and your consultant to give to the principal, which may actually support what they're saying in relation to the risk assessment, and it would negate the necessity for an appointment with occupational health and also eliminate the delay in that context. So it might be worth trying that.
Thanks, Nuala. There's another question here. Are there any additional rights to sick pay for temporary teachers being paid through NISTR when absent due to COVID? Again, Nuala referenced the access to sick pay. One complication that we often find ourselves looking at is if you're a substitute teacher and you're on NISTR register, that's how the school access a substitute teacher, and it's the system's way of making sure that the teacher is qualified, Access NI checked, and GTC verified. So that's the access route, is through NISTR. The second part of that is depending on the nature of the post. If you're in to cover one day or a short-term absence, then it's appropriate for you to be paid for the days that you work. And currently, you don't get sick pay for the days that you don't work. And that's part of the reason why teachers get paid 1/365th for a day, where substitute teachers, it's a different calculation. So your rate for a daily rate of pay is slightly higher, and that's to offset for the days that you don't work. But if you're a substitute teacher or you're temporary teacher and you're in for a longer period, then we would say the school are maybe cutting corners. If there is a legitimate vacancy for, say, a term or a maternity cover, They may well have sourced the teacher through the NISTR system, but they shouldn't be paying that teacher a daily rate of pay. That should be a fixed term appointment for a set period of time, and that's what your contract is. The other issue around COVID is that if the school booked you for 3 weeks, and during that 3 weeks you were told to isolate, or you showed symptoms, or you were ill, the system has provided that you should be paid. The days that you were booked should be honoured, and you would get paid for those. So again, there's a number of issues in that. It's around the access to sick pay. It's around how long you're contracted for, and it's around the separate agreement that we have reached on absences due to COVID, and it's all covered in that. The other thing that Nuala touched on in the presentation as well is that there may be some access to statutory sick pay or some other benefit outside of occupational sick pay. So again, we would refer teachers to that system. NI Direct website is very useful, or indeed the Citizens Advice Bureau, but it's an area, statutory sick pay is an area that strays outside of our remit as trade union reps. Nuala, I think that's all the questions that I have, unless you want to let anybody have a... No, I think we've covered all the questions.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think there's a lot there for people to get their heads around, and it may be that they need to go back in and actually relook at the presentation, or actually the information in relation to the TNC document and sick leave, etc., are available on the union websites as well if you need to refer to that. But I think there's just a couple of things to say, which is be aware of your entitlement to sick leave and sick pay, and also be aware of the attendance procedure and what you need to do as a teacher in relation to the procedure, but also how the procedure should be handled in relation to you, and to ensure that you are treated fairly, sensitively, and that your information is handled in confidence as well.
Thanks very much, Nuala. And just in closing, can I thank Nuala for a very detailed presentation. It is a topic that has a number of complexities to it. We will share this recording. It'll be made available on the 3 union websites. The presentation, as Nuala says, we'll share the presentation. And if anybody has any follow-up questions or any specific individual issues, please get in touch with whichever union you're a member of, and myself from NEU, Nuala at INTO, and Lee from UTU. We'd be more than happy to either deal with the query ourselves or refer it to some of our colleagues, but we'll certainly get an answer to you. So thanks very much for your time, folks. Hopefully that's been useful, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.